Welcome to this mini module on an introduction to systematic reviews. The learning objectives of this module are that by the end of the module, you should understand about the importance of systematic reviews in healthcare, that you learn about the key characteristics of a systematic review, that you're able to describe the stages of a systematic review, and that you know where to look for further information. Systematic reviews feature regularly in the news stories. Most of the time, we're not aware of it unless we actually dig a bit deeper into the news story. Here we have a news clip from February 2017, which reports that we now need to eat 10 portions of fruit and vegetables per day rather than 5. You may remember it caused a lot of consternation at the time. The recommendation wasn't just pulled out of the air, or from just one research study, which can often be the case, but came from a systematic review of 95 studies which involved more than 2 million people, and showed that those who ate more than 800 grams of fruit and veg per day were at lower risk of chronic disease. But more than just informing news stories, systematic reviews inform a lot of what happens in our healthcare practice and our healthcare systems. Systematic reviews are the reference standard for synthesizing evidence in healthcare because of their methodological rigor. They are used to support the development of clinical practice guidelines, and they inform clinical decision-making for organisations like NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, i.e. they are used to inform decisions on whether certain drugs or treatments should be recommended or made available on the NHS. With a recognition of the need for researchers to look at the evidence base before embarking on new research, and the need for reviews to be more robust, i.e. more systematic and less opinion-based, systematic reviews have become more common in the literature. In 2010, it was estimated that about 11 systematic reviews a day were being published. So what do we mean by the highest form of evidence and rigor? Here we have the evidence pyramid. The pyramid shows you the confidence we have in the evidence from different research. At the bottom of the pyramid, you will see expert opinion. There's certainly value in experienced judgment, but the evidence is open to bias. Further up the pyramid, we have what is called observational research in the form of case reports and cohort studies. This non-experimental research is not controlled and is therefore not able to account for biases that may exist in the populations and study design. Randomized controlled trials are experimental research, and they try to minimize bias and confounding. They are regarded as the highest form of primary research evidence, though we do have to remember that not all randomized controlled trials are well conducted. Systematic reviews brings together the findings from these different research designs and assesses their quality, and in so doing provides the most reliable evidence. Most often, systematic reviews bring together the evidence from RCTs, randomized controlled trials, especially if we're looking at effectiveness. But you can get systematic reviews of qualitative research, and you can get systematic reviews of observational studies. It very much depends on what the research question is trying to answer, and we'll talk more about this at the workshop. So what is so special about a systematic review? Why are systematic reviews any different from other reviews that we see in the literature? Here is a table from Bethany Saltykov, and this shows you the many differences between a systematic review and more general literature reviews that we find. We will be seeing some of these differences in more detail in the modules to come, but let's pick out a few here now. So, for example, if we look at the search strategy halfway down on that table, the one probably most relevant for yourselves, a search strategy in a systematic review will be a comprehensive search conducted in a systematic way, whereas in many other reviews that you may see, there will be no search strategy described at all. Another key feature of a systematic review is looking at the quality of the papers in the review. So under process of evaluating articles in a systematic review, there's a comprehensive evaluation of the study each study within the review. However, you'll find in most other literature reviews, the studies of the included papers aren't discussed at all or brought into the synthesis in any way. So what actually is a systematic review? A systematic review attempts to collate all relevant evidence that fits pre-specified eligibility criteria to answer a specific research question. Now that sounds quite wordy, but there are some key features. A systematic review has a clearly stated set of objectives with explicit, reproducible methodology. It should have a systematic search that attempts to identify all studies that meet the eligibility criteria. It should have an assessment of the validity of the findings of the included studies, i.e., looking at a risk of bias, and we'll talk more about this at the workshop. And it should have a systematic presentation and synthesis of the characteristics and findings of the included studies, taking into account that quality assessment. Here are 3 definitions of what a systematic review is, from the Cochrane Library, the Epicenter, and the Campbell Collaboration. You can see the similarities and the key features amongst them. Finding, searching, using transparent, explicit methods, appraising, looking at the quality, minimizing the bias, i.e. being reliable, and bringing the evidence together. What can be said about all the studies? Here we see our interpretation of what the stages of a systematic review are. We will be working through the online module and the face-to-face workshop with this flow in mind. The most important step for researchers is ensuring they get the research question right at the very start of the review, the box in purple, top left. Once this has been clearly defined, often with the help of a team or peers, and after perhaps some scoping searches, which we'll be hearing about later on the online modules and a bit about on the workshop, then the search and the rest of the review has a reference to fall back on. Take a few minutes to look through the flow of the review and see if it makes sense to you. See if there are things in the flowchart that you might not have thought about or are new to you. Hopefully, by the end of the modules and the workshop, you'll understand the whole flowchart. Finally, here are some resources for where to go to help with understanding more about systematic reviews. I think you'll be very familiar with many of these names by the end of the workshop. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll be speaking to you again soon. Bye-bye.